And just like that, football season is upon us. We're about a month out from the Arizona football season. So myself, Justin Spears, and Michael Lev, we're back talking football on a weekly basis on the Wildcast podcast. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and comment on Apple, Spotify, and also check out the video version of the Wildcast on Tucson.com. So with training camp officially starting this week, Lev and myself, we're going to go down position by position and take a look at what the Arizona Wildcats are up to in year 2 of the Brent Brennan era. Just taking a look back at last season, the Wildcats, I would say, had a disappointing season considering the expectations, right? They went 4-8 in a year where we were talking about them maybe even winning the Big 12 and even getting into the college football playoff. And when you look at how the season went, it's almost like ASU had the magical season that we all thought Arizona could have. And the one thing that we didn't really highlight last year, or I guess we talked about it, but we should have emphasized it a little bit more, is that on paper, Arizona looks great. Tetaroa McMillan, Jonas Avianea, these superstars coming back. But then when you start to really get into the depth of Arizona football, that's where you kind of get into some trouble. In Arizona, they dealt with a lot of injuries last season, in addition to some poor coaching. And it was just a recipe for disaster. So, Lev, as we turn to the new era or the new season under Brent Brennan, how do you look back on last season and just how Brent Brennan and the staff went about year 1? And what do you think they ultimately learned about themselves? And what do you think they can apply to year 2?
I think all of us underestimated how difficult it is to make a transition on the fly, especially when you're starting later than the traditional starting point, right? Like usually when you make a coaching change these days, that's something that happens in maybe early December, right? And this was mid-January. There's just a lot going on. Some mistakes were definitely made by Brent Brennan in terms of how he put his staff together. I think we can all point to the offensive coordinator situation as the biggest one. And so you've got a new offensive coordinator in Seth Dagey, complete reset on that side of the ball. Defense kind of is as well. I mean, they obviously were able to keep a lot of veteran players. Danny Gonzalez was on the staff last year, but it's his defense now. And he's going to put his stamp on it. He has, a bit more of a resume as a play caller than Dwayne Akina did. So I think one of the lessons from last year is like, you got to get the coordinators right. I think the second one, again, we all misanalyzed this situation, but like you said, they had some great players last year. They didn't have enough good players. I think this year's team, they don't have as many great players, maybe a couple, and those are kind of TBD still. Like Genesis Smith, we know how good he can be, but he certainly is not like a household name by any stretch. But they have more good players now. So that's kind of, the strategy that they had to deploy in terms of putting their roster together. You could kind of make an analogy to softball in a way. Like softball hasn't had that like incredible ace pitcher for several years now. And maybe that's the difference between Arizona softball being just a regional or super regional team and going to the World Series. But they've had a lot of really good pitchers, and they've kind of tried that committee approach with their pitching. And it's, it has resulted in decent success. Maybe it puts a ceiling on what you're capable of. I don't think anyone thinks this Arizona football team has a really high ceiling, but maybe they've lifted the floor a little bit. And maybe they can get to that 6-6 level, which I think, you and I think that that's realistic if things go their way. Even last year, for those of us who tried to sort of talk ourselves into the 6-6 thing, I mean, they were 4-8, and there were a couple games they could have won, right? If there were a couple close one-score type games where if a couple things had gone their way, they would get to 6-6. And that's with an offense that was just pretty terrible for most of the season and a bunch of injuries on the offensive line. and in the defensive secondary. So
Yeah.
that's just kind of where I see things as we
Mhm.
head into 2025.
And Brent was really put into a tough situation, and people are going to listen to this and think that we're like sticking up for Brent. And I think that he needs to really get a little bit of grace here, because when you think about the recruiting calendar, or just a calendar in general in the college football world, coming in January after missing that first transfer portal window, that was a huge missed opportunity for Arizona, because a lot of those transfer portal guys ended up following Jed to Washington or going somewhere else. And so when you're in the spring, you're not necessarily getting the pick of the litter, and then you're also assembling a staff, and you're also re-recruiting the players who are currently on the team as well. And when you think about Brent Brennan, usually when you're a first-year head coach, you're going into a situation where you have a lot of runway, because more often than not, you're going into a situation to where the roster is bad and you have to rebuild. Brent Brennan wasn't rebuilding. He was trying to maintain. He was trying to maintain the momentum of the Alamo Bowl year, where Arizona won 10 games. And, even in the 3 losses, they lost those games by a combined 16 points. So even in the setbacks, Arizona was competitive, and it was a really fun year. And Brent Brennan's like, okay, how do I keep everything together? How do I put my stamp on the program while also maintaining the momentum that Jed Fish had built? And he even said it at Big 12 Media Days, and I'm actually kind of glad he did. He felt like last year he was trying to kiss some ass. He was kissing ass last year, trying to keep everyone locked in. And it's so hard to really coach the way that you want to coach when you've got a Takario Davis who's 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like, Takario Davis was in the transfer portal the entirety of spring. And when you have a player like that, how do you coach him? Okay, you coach him hard. You say one bad thing, he's out of here. All right, see ya. I'm already in the portal. Now I'm really going to go, and I'm going to go somewhere else. Or do you kind of kiss his ass a little bit so he can stay here, because we all looked at Takario Davis as a potential first-round pick and maybe even Arizona's top defensive back. So all these things, all these factors, you almost felt like it would have been a better situation for all these players to enter the portal and leave Arizona. And you could justify going 4-8 last year. But when you have these expectations, coupled with the fact that Arizona got their teeth kicked in every single day, like 8 losses by a combined 191 points after 3 losses by a total of 16 points, like that's a really big turnaround. So they were losing games and they were also getting slaughtered. And when you add the expectations and everything, it was just really a bad situation for Brent Brennan. Albeit Brent Brennan, the coaching staff, they also had some issues that, they, had to work on last year. All the special teams blunders, the punting on 4th down near midfield when you're down by, a few touchdowns. Like, there were some things where I kind of questioned the coaching staff, but I think when you look at all the factors, like I said, with the kissing ass and trying to maintain the momentum, that was just such a bad situation for Brent. But fortunately for him, and fortunately for the current staff, they feel like they have the right coordinators at the right spots. They feel like all the other coaches are at the right seat at the table. And the players who have decided to stay, like Noah Fafita, Genesis Smith, Traden Stukes, Dalton Johnson, they all know how the staff is. They want to be with the staff. And the guys that are new, there's 54 of them. There's a lot of newcomers. Over half the roster is going to be new. Those guys were recruited by this staff, and Brent Brennan and his coaches, they had a full recruiting cycle. So now it really feels like, Lev, this is Brent Brennan's team, and we'll see if it results to wins in year 2.
There's something he said at Big 12 Media Days that I really liked. It could rub some people the wrong way, but one of the sort of the traits that he was looking for in players is like, do you want to be here? Right? We are looking for players who want to be here. And he basically said, like, if you don't want to be here, see ya.
Yeah.
We don't want you either. Right? So there's no ambivalence about any of that. Right? Like, you want to be an Arizona Wildcat? Great. Come on, let's go. And if not, have good luck to you. You see you later. Best of luck in your career elsewhere. So I think he's kind of drawing that line in the sand a little bit. I am hopeful that he's going to feel the freedom to be himself in to the ultimate extent this year, because I felt like he was holding back a little bit last
Yes,
year. Like we'd
totally.
see videos of him like with the media, San Jose State, like just kind of being a little freer, a little goofier. And I just didn't get that sense last year. Maybe that was because he was new. He felt uncomfortable. He didn't know us as well. Um, he's been a little more like, I noticed it right away in the offseason, a little bit more organized, right? He'll come up there with notes. He'll have kind of a opening statement or some talking points that he wants to put out there. So, he's taking ownership of those things a little bit. There's definitely a transition for him too. I mean, Arizona is not Georgia or Alabama or Texas or Ohio State, but it's certainly on a higher plane than San Jose State in terms of scrutiny, media coverage, etc. So I think that was an adjustment for him and his staff, in addition to all those other things. But yeah, there's it was a lot of stuff, and we head into this training camp here with, I think, super intriguing time for Arizona football. Like even last year with all of the changes, we kind of knew what the roster looked like. We kind of knew what, like, position by position. This year, I think a ton of questions, a lot more competition. Except a quarterback, right? which is our starting point. Where there's really no competition there at least for the number one job. Maybe there is for number two. I don't think so. I think those are pretty set in stone. What's your kind of biggest
Yeah.
burning question about the quarterback position as we head into camp, which begins on Wednesday?
Yeah. Well, really, it's just like the pecking order behind Noah. And like you said, Lev, you feel like QB2 is already set in stone. Braden Locke, the transfer from Wisconsin, just because, he's got over 2,000 career passing yards. He's got legitimate like game time starting experience. So, God forbid, knock on wood, something happens to the birthday boy, who, by the way, when we're recording this, Noah Fafita is celebrating his 22nd birthday. If something happens with Noah, they have an option that they can rely on. They don't have to turn to a true freshman. They do have some good freshmen. Luke Halgo is, 6'5", big quarterback. He's got some potential. Sawyer Anderson, I always, I think about, Rich Rodriguez when, he would talk about his recruiting philosophy. And he said, if you want a really good college football player, you go out and you get a really good high school football player. And Sawyer Anderson is one of the best to ever do it in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Threw for over 14,000 yards, which is a Dallas-Fort Worth area record. He's got a ton of passing yards. He's one of Texas's all-time passing yards leader. And now he's probably going to be Arizona's third-string quarterback. So he's a project guy, a guy that they expect to rely on in the future. We talk about quarterback competition. If that quarterback competition could be very fierce in 2027, assuming Noah Fafita comes back for next season. But 2027, you got Sawyer Anderson, Oscar Rios, after a season of playing for the Arizona Wildcats. So QB competition 2027 could be legit. But I think the competition now, I think the pecking order, in my opinion, things could happen for the QB2 race. But I think Noah Fafita, Braden Locke, and then Sawyer Anderson, Luke Halgo, those guys will probably be tied for QB3.
Here's my question. Which Noah Fafita are we going to get? Are we going to get the 2023 version of Noah Fafita, who had I think a 25-6 touchdown to interception ratio, extremely high completion percentage, playmaker, and game manager at the same time? Or are we going to get the 2024 version of Noah, who developed some bad habits, frankly, drifting in the pocket, holding the ball too long, throwing the ball away, locking in on one target, throwing too many picks? Like, there's a lot of stuff. He did not, he regressed last year. Or
No doubt.
Behind door number 3, maybe it's somewhere in between, right?
I think it's somewhere in between.
Yeah. And if that's the case, statistically, I think that would be fine. Totally different offense. He seems like he's in lockstep with Seth Dagey. But in my opinion, despite the fact that he is a proven starter in college football, I think Noah Fafita has something to prove this year. that he's more of the 2023 guy than the 2024 guy, that he just was in a bad situation, developed some bad habits. I think it's really hard to develop good habits and break bad habits. Like we all kind of go through that in our daily lives, right? Whether that's exercise, diet, just like being more organized as a person, going through your to-do list. It's tough when you get into those ruts. I think that the fresh start, the reset of bringing in Seth Dagey is going to snap Noah Fifita out of it, but got to show it in games.
Yeah.
So we'll see what that looks like in a few weeks.
The drifting into the abyss of the pocket, that was very Jaden Delora-esque.
Yeah, it sure was. Holding onto the ball, Jaden Delora-esque too.
Yeah. So that was not the Noah Fifita that we saw in 2023. The Noah Fifita that we saw in 2023 was crisp, on schedule, getting the ball out. Your favorite stat, time to throw, TTT.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was at 3.14 in 2024, and it was 2.55 in 23, which for like the casual football fan, you're like, okay, what's the big deal? Half a second?
It's
half
everything.
A second of football is a lot. That's a lot of time. So, I think that getting the ball out quickly and into the hands of his speedster playmakers, I think is going to be something that they prioritize. But, you talk about which version are we going to get? And I said a little bit of both. I think it's going to be that in more of like a positive way, because, while Noah Fifita did regress last year, he did regress, right? He threw he tied for the most interceptions in the Big 12 last year, had the most throwaways in college football. It was just not the best year for Noah Fifita. But I will say he did improve as a runner. I do think that, there were a couple of times last year, was it the West Virginia game or Texas Tech, where he like bulldozed West Virginia, where he like ran through a guy and scored a touchdown. And I'm like, whoa, that little Noah Fifita is over here, what they refer to as running through the smoke. And Noah did that. So I think the fact that he has improved as a runner, I think you're going to see more design runs for Noah with Seth Dagey. And are we expecting Noah Fifita to go 2017 Khalil Tate here? No, but you're going to see Noah pick up those 5 to 6 yard runs and keep Arizona's offense on schedule. So I think we're going to see a combination of 2024 and 23 Noah Fifita, but for the good reasons. And, we'll see. I'm not going to sit here and say that Noah Fifita is going to, prove all the doubters wrong, because there are a lot of great quarterbacks in the Big 12 this year, but I think you're going to get a not so turnover prone version of Noah Fifita in Seth Dagey's system.
Yeah, for those who had a chance to watch the offense at all in spring practice, there's a lot of read option built into this system.
Yeah.
So, there may be times where Noah Fifita keeps the ball, takes off and runs, and that just adds another dimension to his game, and also something that the defense has to be concerned about. He's certainly capable. And like you said, we're not asking him or expecting him to be Khalil Tate. But if you can, on occasion, on a 3rd and 7, get 8 yards, that makes a huge difference in a game. It's very demoralizing for the defense too when that happens. I think you've mentioned this too. They got away from throwing the ball to their running backs last year, and this is a good segue into the next position. I think they're going to throw a lot more to the running backs this year. Like there are going to be a lot of screen passes and quick flare passes just to get the ball out and into the hands of the playmakers. Who do we think, like when they line up that for that first snap against Hawaii, who do you think is going to be standing next to Noah in the backfield?
I want to say Ismail Mahdi. Like in my personal opinion, I think that Ismail Mahdi is the overall the better running back. But I think they'll probably, for that first game, they'll probably roll out Kedrick Reesano, the guy who was there last year, was really, kind of thrusted into more of a prominent role. Like it was supposed to be Ja'Cory Cross-Gamere and Quali Conley as the two headliners, maybe a wrinkle with Rayshon Speedy Luke. And then eligibility issues happened with Ja'Cory, and Rayshon decided to redshirt. And then Kedrick Reesano was like, okay, I'm the next guy in line. And, I think getting that game experience and just kind of going through the season was really helpful for Kedrick. I don't really know what his expectations are or what he's going to do this year, but he is going to be a mainstay. He will be one of Arizona's top running backs. But I think as far as production for both receiving and rushing, maybe even touchdowns, I'll probably put Ismail Mahdi as the number one guy, and then Quincy Craig, the transfer from Portland State. I think he's going to be really effective in the passing game. There were a couple of times in the spring where he caught some deep passes along the sideline and set up Michael Salgado Medina for some field goals. And he's probably going to be Arizona's third running back. I don't know. I break up Arizona's running backs into two groups. Like, I think it's going to be Ismail Mahdi, Kedrick Risano, Quincy Craig, and then you've got the two youngsters, the Wesley Yarbrough and Cornelius Warren III, guys who are developing. You might see them get a touch or two here and there in games, but the three running backs are the veterans that I just mentioned, and they're going to work on developing the other guys.
Yeah, I think that we're going to see Quincy Craig in something of a third down role. One of Alonzo Carter's pet phrases is "no block, no rock." So you've got to be able to handle a blitzing safety or linebacker.
Yep.
Or even a defensive lineman that comes through. And I think Quincy Craig might be the most adept at that. That's a major work in progress for Kedrick Risano, who is a really good, hard runner, big and physical back, big time pedigree coming in here. Was a big recruit who started his career at Ole Miss. To me, I think he's just the best, like, pure power back that they have. And Ismail Mahdi is kind of the big play guy who can do it all. He can also be a threat out of the backfield. You can never have too many running backs. It's a position where, injuries are always kind of lurking around the corner. So I think having, kind of like you said, three veterans to share the load, I think is a good setup for them. One thing I would make sure that I do, Justin, is double and triple check the eligibility of the transfers that they've brought in, just to make sure. Like, let's make sure. Let's just one more time. Let's check Quincy Craig, Ismail Mahdi. Do they have another year? Like, are there any was there any weird grainy film out there that we are unaware of that we need to make sure that it's not them, like wearing a different number or whatever the case might be? Because look, I have heard people say, oh, Brent Brennan will never have a better team than he had last year when he had 4 draft picks on his team. Well, okay. One of those guys played one game. And another of those guys, with all due respect to Tyler Loop, who we really like and admire, it was a kicker. Okay. Which, I mean, he was really good. He was a weapon for the team. He's going to have a great career in the NFL. But, don't sit here and say that, oh, they had four NFL draft picks. I mean, they had 3 1/4.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe if you want to even give 3 and a 12th.
3 and a 10th.
Yeah.
And a 12th, yeah.
So anyway, yeah. And yeah, so I think they've rebuilt the running back room almost entirely. And I think it's one of the easier positions to kind of find guys. And I think they're going to be just fine there, assuming the offensive line does its job. We'll get to them. Wide receiver is another one where they have it's a new look.
Speed.
Almost there's a lot more speed. Completely rebuilt in, I would say, sort of in Brent Brennan's image. This is the position that he coaches the most. That he was a wide receivers coach back in the day. Obviously, they had one really, really good player last year. They had a player in Chris Hunter who developed over the course of the year. They didn't have that much else. Now it's you've thrown out potential starting lineups, and I'm like, maybe, right? But it could be other guys too.
Yeah.
I think they go. You could make a case that they go 6 deep, and that they're going to rotate all of those dudes. How do you see that?
Yeah,
that part of it. Do you see them playing 3 or 4? Do you see them playing 5 or 6?
No, this is going to be, because Bobby Wade, we asked him in the spring, how many do you envision? And he said, 6 or 7. That's kind of the ideal rotation. And it's not like what Jed Fish did. Jed like doing the pro style model. Like we're just going to play the 3 best guys. But the thing is, it's easy to play those 3 best guys when they are literally NFL players, right? Like even Montana Lamonius Craig, while he fell off last year and got replaced by Chris Hunter, he's having a cup of coffee with the Pittsburgh Steelers right now in training camp. So you had 3 NFL level players at wide receiver, and then you had an NFL tight end in Tanner McLaughlin. So now moving on to this year's group of receivers, you don't have Tetairoa McMillan. But like you said, Lev, outside of T-Mac last year, what else did you have outside of Chris Hunter? Jeremiah Patterson kind of regressed. Raymella Murphy didn't live up to the expectations that we had for him. Malachi Riley got banged up and then ended up transferring. So there was just no consistency at wide receiver outside of T-Mac. And the thing that's so crazy to me is that T-Mac literally made up a third of Arizona's offense last year. Like, that is not a joke. Like 31% of the offensive production was because of Tetairoa McMillan. 44% of the passing game was because of him. So, like, when you have a player that makes up that large of your offensive production, and then you lose that, okay, well, how do you go about it? You don't do it by getting the next T-Mac. You do it by committee. And I think the guys that they added in the portal and also the high school level too, like they added a ton of speed. Isaiah Mizell and Gio Richardson, the 2 freshmen that they've added, are very fast receivers. I don't know what their role is going to be like this year, if they're even going to be in that mix, but next year, the year after that, like these are going to be legitimate wide receivers for Arizona. And I love the guys that they added in the portal, because when you look at it on paper, Lev, like, okay, Chattanooga, receiver from Chattanooga. Okay, cool. You got a receiver from New Mexico. All right. Washington State. What did Chris Hudson do? All of these guys were productive at their last spots. And I think because of the current landscape of college football, if you look at the pyramid, right, Arizona has to look at these schools. They have to look at the Chattanoogas and the New Mexicos and like, okay, what do you guys have to offer? Because yes, while Brent Brennan, could sit there and say like, oh, we're recruiting guys that want to be here, money is also a little bit a part of the equation too. I'm pretty sure Arizona is probably giving Luke Weissong more money than New Mexico could have offered him. Chattanooga, obviously Javen Watley is going to be making way more money than he did at Chattanooga. So I think that the receivers that they added, they were very productive. They're very fast. They all come from track backgrounds. So they're super, super fast. And I think it's going to be good for Noah to really use this month in training camp to continue to establish those relationships with those receivers. Because last year, I really felt like he was hunting T-Mac. And I mean, why wouldn't you? He's the best receiver in program history. Now you don't have T-Mac. I mean, the last time Noah Fafita and T-Mac were not teammates, Rich Rodriguez was a coach here. Khalil Tate was a backup quarterback at Arizona. So it's been a while since Noah Fafita has thrown to a guy other than T-Mac. And I think now that he's able to read the offense and really go through his progressions as a quarterback and not hunt T-Mac, I think that's going to be really good for him at the end of the day. And I think there's going to be a lot of guys that are coming in and out of the rotation. I mean, we talk about Trey Spivey at that X receiver. How about Brandon Phelps? I mean, redshirt freshman, didn't really play last year. I mean, you can make an argument that he had the best second half of the spring among any Arizona wide receiver. So there's a lot of question marks there, a lot of intriguing prospects. And yes, you don't have Tetairoa McMillan, but I think the receiver room is probably better than last year.
So we obviously talked about it a ton last year, like how much is too much with T-Mac. Like sometimes it felt like it was too little. Sometimes it felt like it was too much. I definitely observed what you pointed out, that sometimes it seemed like he was locked in on T-Mac and he was going to throw it to him no matter what. Now you would hope that he's just going to throw to whoever's open, and that whoever that person is going to be capable of catching the ball and making a play. I know you've kind of thrown out there the possibility of Chris Hudson, Chris Hunter, Trey Spivey being the starters, but you could make a case that Javen Watley and Brandon Phelps were the best receivers that they had in spring.
No doubt.
That's sort of a good problem to have, right? I feel like that. And then that doesn't even mention Luke Weissong. So I think they definitely can go like 6 deep. They're going to play a fast up-tempo offense. Those guys are going to be running a lot. One of the issues that T-Mac had last year, too, is arguably played too much. And he almost never came off the field. And people accused him of being lazy. I think he was just tired. Like, how many times, too, like, were there, like, scramble drill plays where he's, like, probably running a route and then running all the way across the field? They're going to keep those guys fresh. We don't talk about it that much at the receiver position, but I think it's a real thing. They're going to keep those guys fresh. They're going to rotate them a bunch. And it's maybe going to be kind of a flavor of the week.
Yeah.
Like, it could be just a different guy, like, each game who emerges as the one who catches 7 or 8 balls. If anybody does, maybe it's just a bunch of guys who catch 4 or 5, and that's just fine too. That's just another way to go about it. It was funny, Justin, in spring, tight end looked a certain way, and then shortly after, like, that position looked a little bit different, yet also familiar, right? With the return of Kean Burnett. You had a chance to talk to Kean. I think we get him on. I think we're gonna get him on Media Day as well,
Tuesday.
But interesting. He just kind of, I don't know, went off and had his little internship at Kansas, decided to come back here, had some background with Seth Dagey, who recruited him at USC, which I think is like there's a relationship there. That was probably a big factor in why he decided to come back. Obviously has a relationship with Noah Fafita. He was the guy in last year's training camp that I'm like, this dude, he was the best player on offense.
Yeah.
I'm like, breakout. This is a breakout season. Like, he's going to be the guy. It did not happen. He had injuries kind of throughout the season that were, not enough to like completely put him on the shelf, but he wasn't himself either. So talk about a year to like where someone has to prove himself. Like, this is it for Kean. Like, it is kind of now or never. Are you going to be that guy that, everyone thought you could be coming out of high school? Or just for some people, it doesn't happen. So we'll see. And I think health is a huge factor.
It's your last year, bro. Make it count. I mean, the first couple of years he was behind Tanner McLaughlin, and no one thought that Tanner McLaughlin, when he first got here, was going to become an NFL tight end. I was like, who the hell is this transfer from Southern Utah? Okay. But the highest rated tight end since Rob Gronkowski and Kean Burnett, he's going to be that go-to tight end. And then Tanner McLaughlin became a thing, and he understudied Tanner McLaughlin. And then, like you said, Lev, I mean, going into last year, I thought the second best pass catcher behind T-Mac was going to be Kean Burnett. And I'm like, it's going to be like the Servite days all over again. Just Noah throwing it to his buddies, T-Mac and Kean Burnett. And it was just only T-Mac for the most part. Yeah, I think the fact that Kean Burnett being recruited by Seth Dagey at USC certainly was a factor. I mean, this is a relationship that goes back to 6-7 years ago, and Kean was committed to USC. Like, Kean, before he signed with Arizona, he was a USC commit and decided to join his buddies Noah Fafita and Jacob Manu with the Arizona Wildcats, and then T-Mac ended up joining them later. So they've got a relationship. And, Noah being here as well also helps. And, basically when I talked to Kean Burnett, what I gathered was the problems that forced him to go to Kansas are no longer the problems present with Arizona, whether it's, coaches, right? He just, didn't really vibe well with his coaches and wanted a fresh start. So those are no longer the issues. And I think, as a senior, fresh start, coming back in a new offense, I think we're going to see Kean Burnett look more like the Kean Burnett from preseason training camp and also the spring. But we haven't seen him yet, right? We haven't seen him in this offense. So, I mean, he could end up having another underwhelming season, and we just don't know. But, he's got some reinforcements. The other tight end from that 2022 recruiting class that doesn't get a lot of love that I think could end up being really good is Tyler Powell. He's got the frame for it. He's 6'7", 250 or 260 pounds or something like that. Like, he's a big kid. He has a really solid lower half. He can run routes. He's a really good route runner, but he's also got a good lower half and can really help out Arizona in the blocking game too. And I think really with the uncertainty with the offensive line, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, tight ends and running backs are going to be so pertinent when it comes to protecting Noah Fafita. I mean, because the offensive line, you don't know what you're going to get out of them. So, chip blocking for tight ends, picking up blitzes from the running backs, those two position groups are going to be really, really impactful for Arizona. But I think as far as like the pecking order goes with the tight ends, I'll probably put Kean Burnett as that top guy, and then Tyler Powell as the number 2 slot, and then Sam Olsen as the number 3. And then Arizona also added freshman Kellen Ford, who has a very long relationship with Brent Brennan. Brent Brennan was literally there since day one. On the day of Kellen Ford joining the world, Brent Brennan brought a scholarship to the hospital and said, "Hey, whenever he's ready, I'm ready for him to play for me." And he's built like he's 6'5", 240 pounds. Like he is game ready as a true freshman. And I don't want to spill the secrets too much, Lev, but I see 13 personnel in Arizona's future. 3 tight ends, man. Sign me up.
So 13 personnel is the new dollar defense for Justin. Like Justin used to get really excited anytime the dollar package would be used. Seems like they've gone away from that, but the potential of a 13 personnel with 3 tight ends has the former offensive lineman here excited. I'm glad you mentioned the chip blocking. Those tight ends are going to have to do that because we got question marks at offensive tackle, among other positions on the offensive line. I think so. In my head, the starting offensive line is as follows. Rhino Tapatotai at left tackle. Shuba Ma'ai at left guard. Kayana DeCambra at center. Alexander Deuce at right guard. The guards could flop easily. And then Ty Buchanan at right tackle.
Yeah.
So some of this is like, okay, this sounds good. Like Rhino, he was coming on. He played left tackle last year on a team that had Josh Baker and Jonas Anaya. So like this guy must be good, right? Like they trusted him to play left tackle before he got hurt. Seems like he's healthy. He looked great running around in camp. So that's fine. Ty Buchanan, he's played a ton in his career. That's good. Hey, Alexander Deuce established himself last year as a big, strong inside player. Those other 2 spots, huge question marks. Chubba Mai was a defensive tackle until, I don't know, like March 15th of last year when he no longer was. They moved him to the offensive line. We'll get to defensive tackle in a few minutes, determine whether that was a good idea or not based on some developments there. So this is a position he played in high school. Maybe it's a better position for him. That is to be determined. For him, the key is got to stay healthy, got to be in shape, got to be able to play 75 to 85 snaps week after week.
Yep.
I don't know. I think that's very much an open question right now. And then with Kayana DeCambra, hadn't played center before, right? Like he started at Hawaii. He wasn't a center. So this is a new position with new responsibilities. And again, this is just my guess as to what this line is ultimately going to look like because we never saw it in spring. Yeah. If that group comes together, it'll be the first time. So yeah, I know you phrased it this way too. Like the position that will probably determine the fate of this team more than any other is that offensive line because all of this stuff about the wide receivers and tight ends and running backs and quarterbacks and set dig, it all sounds good, but if you can't block, you can't move the ball and you can't score.
Yeah. Well, in the O-line last year, they struggled. And I mean, they struggled to stay healthy, but they also struggled. I mean, 7 different starting lines, 11 different starters on the offensive line. Like there was just no continuity. And when you compare that to the year prior, like the only position that dealt with players, going in and out of lineup was right guard, but they had Leif Magnuson and Raymond Polito, like 2 really good options there. Last year, I mean, it was just musical chairs. And then on top of that, you lose 3 starters who have combined to play like well over 7,000 snaps at Arizona. So you're losing a lot there. But like the line, the projected starting line that you gave I think is pretty solid. But my big question for kind of DeCambra is, can you snap on a consistent basis? Because there's going to be a lot of pistol, a lot of shotgun. Can you get the ball there to Noah Fafita and keep the offense in rhythm? And if not, do they flip DeCambra, who has experience at guard, and Chuba Mai, who played center at Long Beach Poly? What do you do? There's some other options there too, like Siale Uluave, a junior college transfer who's a really big body. They look at him as a potential option at guard. Sione Tahi, highly touted recruit out of Mater Dei, 6'3", 356 pounds, had offers from Alabama and Auburn and LSU and all these other great schools. So, they've got some younger options, but of course on the offensive line, you want to be able to have the veterans, the guys with the experience, the big bodies. And, can you run the football? One thing that made Arizona a great team, in 2023 was they were just so balanced. Last year, they were not balanced. I mean, they really could not run the football. I mean, they had the second worst rushing offense in the Big 12. So if you can get those runs and get some push up front, which Seth Doege does value, he loves running the football. He did it last year at Marshall. I think if you're able to find a balance led by the offensive line, getting that push, then I think Arizona's offense is going to take a step in the right direction. But yeah, Lev, this offensive line, man, how is Rhino going to look coming back from injury? While Rhino was great, only I think allowed 2 sacks last year, but then, how does a left tackle look coming back from an ACL injury? Looked great for Jordan Morgan. Jordan Morgan turned out to be a first-round pick after tearing his ACL. What Rhino are we going to get? So, yeah, this offensive line, this is my biggest question mark going into the season.
Do I have this right? They have 20 offensive linemen.
Yes.
On their roster. Yep. That is a crazy amount.
Yep.
And usually I think 15 is kind of what your goal is. So they're throwing a ton of resources at this potential problem. And if you look like kind of roster wide, they've sort of set things up they brought in some transfers who have only 1 year left at a bunch of positions. Ty Buchanan is a good example of that. And they have a pretty large freshman class too. Hey man, if you're patient and you like how things are going for you, even if you don't play a lot this year, there's going to be a ton of playing time opportunities at the offensive line and a bunch of other positions on this roster in 2026.
Absolutely.
A little sneak preview for the people out there. That's a topic I'm going to explore a little bit late, maybe this week or next, like how these freshmen fit into this whole thing. But yeah, a lot of question marks there. A lot of question marks. And we're going to try our best to give people our assessment of things in camp, but sometimes it's tough because they don't do a ton of hitting these days. They don't go into full pads all that often. So it's hard to tell sometimes who's really winning those battles in the trenches, but big spotlight on that offensive line for sure.
Absolutely.
Ready for defensive line?
Hold on.
Yeah.
The kicking game, man.
You want to do the kicking game now? Or do you want to save it for the end?
Let's save it for the end.
I know you love the kicking game.
We love
it. Okay, so they were supposed to have two junior college transfers at defensive tackle who, as of this recording, are not on the roster.
Yeah.
Right? Ezra Funa is one of them, and the other one is Zach Siulepa. What is your understanding of the status of these guys?
Yeah, so those guys are dealing with some academic obligations that they got to work through in order to get cleared to play. Peter Lange, the offensive lineman from San Francisco, he's currently in the same boat. So there's a few guys out there that need to take care of the academic side of it before they can join the Arizona Wildcats. And, kind of going back to the whole Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt thing, right? Arizona wants to make sure that these guys are cleared and they are eligible to play for the Arizona Wildcats. And Ezra Funa is a junior college prospect. Same with Zach Siulepa. But yeah, they're just kind of going through some academic things before they join the team.
Do you think there's
TBD?
Do you think there's any potential issue there?
Yeah.
Like whether is it 50-50 whether they're going to be here?
I
And
don't know
if
if it's
so,
yeah,
okay.
I don't know if it's like if it's 50-50. I mean, I think it's unfair to them for me
Okay.
to put a percentage on that. Um, but I mean, the fact that you have these summer academic obligations, and then we got training camp starting right now. Like it's not the best to look, but hopefully, some things happen and they're able to get cleared and join the team. Like Isaac Lovison, the Australian punter, he's dealing with some schooling in Australia that he's got to work through just because of the calendar and the way it's set up. Like he will join the team at some point, but they just got to work through certain things. But man, if they can get Ezra Funa, I know they were really high on Ezra Funa. I mean, former modern day guy, had to go the JC route. If he's able to play at Arizona, I mean, look out, this guy could be legit. And then Zach Ciulepa, 6'7", 365 pounds. You could put that big guy in the middle. He's going to plug up some lanes and take up a lot of blockers. So yeah, those JUCO guys, if they can get them, Arizona's going to be in a really good spot. But
Okay,
yeah, right now,
flip side. If
okay,
they can't, are you concerned
a
about
little bit,
defensive tackle? Because I'm not sure if they don't have those guys, I'm not sure they're better off than they were last year. Like we
yeah,
like Tia Savea had a really good camp. It seems like he's in a position right now where he's going to try to maximize his last year of college. Deshaun McKnight was kind of a revelation. Honestly, like didn't come in with as much fanfare as some of the other guys like Malachi Bailey and Chancellor Owens. When you looked at just all of their resumes, their production, etc., you thought he was maybe third out of those three, but
yeah,
he was the best, and he's definitely going to start at defensive tackle. But beyond those guys, I
yeah,
don't know. It worries me a lot, almost like to the point where I might elevate defensive line above offensive line on the concern meter. Just in
yeah,
terms of like the depth, what you have to have at
yeah.
least like two strings, right? Of guys that you feel good about, and I'm not sure we're there.
Yeah, I feel confident in guys like Tia Savea and Deshaun McKnight. And Tia, so I noticed in the spring he was 295,
Okay,
and now he's at 310. So Tia in the offseason, gained 15 pounds, looks more like a defensive tackle. But Joe Salavea said, yeah, he came back from his time off. He went home and then came back. I mean, yes, he's a little bit bigger, but I mean, he looks like he's still light on his feet, still in really good shape, still heavy-handed. So I think Tia Savea under Joe Salavea is going to have a really big year. Deshaun McKnight, speaking of big guys who are light on their feet, this was a player who was recruited to play South Carolina or outside linebacker coming out of high school in South Carolina, and was probably Arizona's top defensive lineman in the spring, I would say. But like you said, Lev, like if those guys get banged up, who are you going to rely on? Chuba Ma'ai is now playing offensive line. Isaiah Johnson decided to go to North Carolina. And so who else do you have? I mean, if you don't have those junior college guys, is Jara Anderson going to be one of your defensive linemen? And he kind of turned it on there towards the second half of the spring. Maybe he, when healthy, is going to be a really good defensive lineman. But yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I think you're right, Lev. I mean, if you don't add those two JUCO defensive tackles, do you move Chuba back to defensive lineman, or do you have him play both sides of the ball and
or
have mostly
maybe
play
there's
defense?
maybe there's someone else who moves from offensive line to defensive line in that case. Since, as I mentioned, they have 20 offensive linemen currently. Leroy Palu is another one. They brought in a junior
Yeah,
college player who can play inside. Julian Saba Anaya, the brother of Jonah, is another possibility. But I think they were counting on those JC guys
yeah,
to be parts of the rotation. So I don't know. I'm concerned about that. If you can't stop the run, like that really puts you in a bind on defense. I'm not as worried about defensive end because I feel like the Riley Wilson and Chase Kennedy, even though they might be labeled as linebackers, are essentially defensive ends.
Yeah.
Right? They're like pass rushers. They're going to do a bunch of different weird things defensively under Danny Gonzalez, where, I mean, those guys are going to be edge players, right? So if we do like Madden is now doing, where they're finally have gone away from the DEOLB labeling to just edge rusher labeling, if we put those guys in that group, I feel okay.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of guys on the team who have the physique of Trey Smith. If he were to go down, that could be an issue, but I think they'll be able to create some edge pressure, whether it's with the traditional defensive ends or the sort of stand-up guys in Kennedy and Riley Wilson, who a lot of people think like is a potential breakout player for them.
Yeah, I think Riley Wilson could end up leading the team in tackles. I think he is
Whoa, really?
that good. Yeah,
Whoa.
I really do. And the thing about that gets me excited about, I guess, the Riley Wilsons and the Chase Kennedys and the Trey Smiths, more so Trey Smith, because in Danny Gonzalez's defense, he is more of a defensive end, is how much the teaching and the coaching of Joe Salavea is going to impact those guys. And I think this is also really going to help out guys like Dominic Lalesio, who is kind of like he's like the fifth Beatle of the group. Like he is the defensive lineman that doesn't really get talked about, but is a guy that's most likely or potentially could start as the opposite defensive end to Trey Smith. And, Donald Lalesio, people forget, he was playing kind of meaningful snaps as a true freshman, right? He was in the fourth quarter of Arizona's win over Colorado and Boulder, playing some snaps. And so I think with 2 years of legitimate playing time and the right coaching, I think we can maybe see Dominic Lalesio, maybe not as a breakout player, but a guy that's just going to be very steady at one of those defensive end spots for Arizona. And when you look at the resume of Joe Salavea, he's coached some really good defensive ends from his time at Oregon and Miami, but what he did at Washington State and really evolving Hercules Mataafa as a big-time player. I'm not saying that Trey Smith and Dom Lalesio are going to become the next Hercules Mataafa, but I think, the teaching, adding the tools to their bag, I think you're going to start seeing those pressures turn into sacks, because Trey Smith, he had no problem getting to the quarterback. His only issue was getting to the quarterback to the ground with the ball, turning those pressures into sacks. I think you're going to see an uptick in that, and a big part of that is because of Joe Salavea.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm going to be looking for too with Trey Smith is, can you please be better at edge containment? Because there was that kind of under the previous defensive line coach, Joe Ciamalu, it was kind of just like rush upfield, period. That was just kind of the game plan. And how many times did we see like the quarterback pull and run around the edge, or just Trey Smith getting caught inside too much? Like, hey, put up good pressure. Hey, we are all about pressures, like key stat in evaluating a defensive lineman, especially a defensive end. But that's not the entirety of the job, right? Like, you're also responsible for setting that edge, forcing plays back to the inside. So I need to see that from him too. But huge, like the biggest upgrade they made this offseason was probably the defensive line coach, right? Like, wow, that's a grand slam. Even more than a home run. That was a great move on their part in terms of just pure upgrade in terms of resume, respect in the room, presence, but also like from a fan standpoint, like people know who Joe Salavea is, and it's not just a nostalgia play either, because he is an established and effective defensive line coach and recruiter, who's going to help them to get some big bodies in here, which that's the essence of football, right there. So you could have a 4-2-5, or you could have a 3-3-5, right? I don't know. Heck, maybe we can even have a 2-4-5, depending on how you classify Kennedy and Riley Wilson. But like as far as space linebackers go, like the pure linebackers, it's Tay Brown and Max Harris.
Yep.
Right. Those are the guys that I would call like pure linebackers who are going to drop into zones or cover running backs, etc. Tay Brown, inconsistent last year, but I think there's enough stuff there where you feel like he's on an upward trend, and he's smart enough, he's big enough, he's fast enough. Maybe it all kind of clicks for him this year. And Max Harris, interesting guy. I mean, he's on his 4th school in 4 years. And he's kind of just moved a little bit up, like a little bit higher every time. So this is a chance for him to prove that he belongs at this level, right? They obviously saw that when they were scouting him and recruiting him in the portal. And I'd say the other thing I would say about this group of guys is it's very dependent on what the defensive linemen do.
Yeah.
Right. Like Jacob Manu, when he was here, was at his best when he had those huge guys in front of him occupying blockers and freeing him up to make plays. It all kind of works together that way. What do you think of that Brown-Harris tandem?
Well, Max Harris, like you said, has been a journeyman in the college football world. Like 4 schools in 4 years, man. Like I'm a creature of habit. So, I mean, just thinking about that and having to move all those times and, moving across town was hard for me. And
I don't know how these kids do it. I really don't.
I don't know. So yeah, I'm curious to see what he does, whether he's a starter or not. I still think he's going to have a big role in Arizona's defense, even if he does not start. But Tay Brown, the thing that's so interesting about him was, you almost forgot that he was on the field last year, but he was never really like a liability, right? Like I never saw, Tay Brown get, just burnt by a tight end or something like that. I can't recall. So he wasn't a liability, but he also wasn't what you would call a playmaker. But, kind of a weird spot for him because he was kind of more like the complementary linebacker. Like it was Jacob Manu's defense. He was the guy. He was the straw that stirred the drink. Now that Jacob Manu's out of the equation, does Tay Brown feel like he's being more of a leader? Like Danny Gonzalez looks at him as a leader of this defense. So now that he's got some experience and now the voice of the defense is no longer there, maybe Tay Brown can assert himself as, hey, I'm a damn good linebacker. And I think he's going to be one of Arizona's starting linebackers. Maybe he's the guy that has the green sticker on the back of his helmet, relaying the plays and all that from the coaches. So, yeah, I think Tay Brown is going to have a very solid year this year. And I think he could be one of Arizona's top tacklers. But I think Riley Wilson, I think this guy's going to be electric, and I think he's going to be a breakout player for the Wildcats. They have really, really solid linebackers. And another guy who could break through is the crowned jewel of Arizona's 2023 recruiting class, and that's Leviticus Sua. He was at Mater Dei, the Trinity League defensive MVP, was at the Polynesian Bowl, and then comes to Arizona and just disappears. But come to find out, he's been dealing with some injuries over the last couple of years. And maybe now that he's healthy, maybe we could see Leviticus Sua start to live up to those expectations when he first got here at Arizona. So some intriguing prospects. I miss my guy, Justin Flo. I really do, but I think they have some really good options at linebacker.
I'm glad you brought up Leviticus Sua. I spotlighted him toward the end of spring practice. We finally started to see it a little bit right toward the end, right? Where he looked like from the moment he got here, he just looked slow, like a step behind. Like you wonder, was he got here a little late? Like, was he out of shape? We came to learn that he had a back injury. And if anyone's ever had a back injury, like, that affects like your whole body, especially if you're like a premier athlete. Maybe you just can't be all that you are trying to be. So I'm really hopeful. I think that would be a good story if he emerges as their number 3 linebacker, or he fills in for one of the other guys, like when they're injured, or even pushes for like legit like starters minutes.
Yeah.
Because I think he's really well liked in the locker room, and it would be a good comeback story. And he still has, like, I think 3 years of eligibility at this point. So, hopefully a long career ahead of him. Hopefully those back issues are in the rear view for our guy Leviticus. Do you think someone like a Myron Robinson could emerge as at least like second string? I
Totally.
don't think there are a lot of true freshmen who are going to have huge impacts this year, but that's one that at least springs to mind for me.
Yeah, All-American Bowl player, played in the Navy All-American Bowl in his hometown of San Antonio. And I've actually gotten some emails about Myron from folks back in Texas. They're like, what's his status? I mean, I watched him play, when he was out there in San Antonio, and he's really good. And I'm like, I haven't heard what the latest is with him, but I mean, if folks from Texas are emailing me about him, then he must be a really good player. So, but yeah, Myron Robinson and the guys that are underclassmen who joined Arizona last year, Jabari Mann and Stacey Bay. Jabari played running back last year. They moved him to tailback, and then they moved him back to linebacker. What's the plans for those guys? A lot of young up and coming prospects at linebacker.
Here's what worries me a little bit about those guys. And look, these weights they're never exact. We don't know like when they were last updated, but I mean, Jabari Mann is listed at 214.
Yeah.
And Stacey Bay is listed at 206. I mean, that's just, you got to be, I think, at minimally 220 pounds.
Yeah.
To be an effective linebacker in the Big 12 and hopefully more than that. So we'll see what those guys look like. I want to say, and I think it was Stacey Bay, one of those two guys I moved to safety with my Arizona Dynasty in last year's college football game toward the end of their careers, because I'm like, I need bigger linebackers. And I used a lot of, a nickel defense where the safety was kind of up at the near the line of scrimmage. And I think it was Stacey Bay, and he ended up doing really well at safety. And I think, didn't he play a little bit of safety? Yeah, in the spring. So,
and then the first time they put him there, he got cooked.
Okay. So maybe it's not necessarily a reflection of real life, but those guys got to get bigger. Like I don't know how exact the weights are, but when I look at Myron Robinson being 213, Jabari Mann being 214, I mean, Jabari's got a whole year on Myron, right? To have been in the weight room and gotten bigger. So those guys need to prove that they're, they have just the basic tools, the tangible stuff, those minimum thresholds that you need in order to play, those positions in college football in the Big 12.
Yep. Should we move on to defensive backs?
Yeah, is this the best position on the team overall?
Yeah,
I would
most
say
experienced.
Yeah. You've got Dalton Johnson, who's played a ton of football.
Yeah.
He was put into a bad spot last year too, where they kind of were making him play linebacker. That's not his natural position. He's a strong safety. So I think like part of this whole like change that they're trying to engineer on defense is they're going to put guys in their best spots. Like Genesis Smith played 3 positions last year.
Yep.
He, I think, is going to be a free safety, right? He is going to be the center fielder. He's going to roam from sideline to sideline, reading the quarterback, disrupting plays, picking off passes. That is, to me, like what he's best at.
Yep.
And then you got Traden Stukes coming back from injury. That's one where I'm not sure where exactly they're going to utilize him. Do you think, is it slot corner? Is it outside corner? Is it a combination of the two? What do you see there?
I think a combination of the two. I asked Traden before Media Day when we had him on the radio show, and I was like, so do you see yourself as that nickel guy, or are you going to play more of like a boundary cornerback type? And he said, yeah, I'm probably going to be, at that nickel spot, but, I'm still taking my reps at cornerback just in case they need me. And he played that spot when he first got to Arizona. I think he's better as a nickel. Like when he gets to the NFL, he is better as a nickel. But I mean, if Arizona doesn't feel good about their options at corner, and you want to have the best combination of defensive backs out there, maybe you consider moving Traden to the outside, and then putting transfer Aiden Garnes, who comes over from West Virginia. He has a ton of experience at nickel from his days at Duquesne and also West Virginia. Jishan Ramos, the transfer from Stanford, he was kind of more viewed as a safety, but he played nickel or that slot corner in the spring, and then he got a little bit banged up and was removed from the lineup. So, yeah, I don't know what they're going to do there. I mean, Marquise Groves Killebrew has experience now. I mean, he's not going to, he was on the Max Harris train there for a little bit where he was just kind of bouncing around from school to school, starting at Texas A&M, then going to Louisville, then going to Arizona, and then going back into the portal before deciding to come back. Maybe the continuity there, actually sticking around at one place, is going to help out a guy like Marquise Groves Killebrew. But, Javion, I feel confident saying that Javion Cole, the transfer from Texas who played for Chip Viney and Brent Brennan at San Jose State, I feel confident saying that he is going to be one of Arizona's starting cornerbacks. So then what do? Do you trust MGK to play the other cornerback spot? Would you rather have Stooks there? That cornerback spot where MGK is now and then where Stooks is going to play, that's my biggest question for the secondary. But it's the position where I have the least concern. Like, I think the defensive backs are going to be great this year. They want to turn it up when it comes to interceptions. Like, they were pretty solid when it comes to forcing fumbles, but now they want to get the interceptions up and turn that secondary into a no-fly zone.
Yeah, you've got Javion Cole on the outside. You've got Michael Dansby, who's another former San Jose State player. Aiden Garnes was used pretty much exclusively in the slot in spring, and I think he's probably going to just kind of work with Traden in there. Maybe we'll see some dime defense at times where both of those guys are on the field covering slot receivers. And I like Traden a lot, as we all know. He was my man. I don't know if I'm going to do the most underrated Wildcat column again, Justin, because 2 years in a row, it just like jinxed the crap out of Michael Wiley and Traden Stooks. I mean, they both got injured. Like, maybe I should stop or rebrand or something, because it seems like I've set those guys up for failure. But Traden is he's really physical and he's big. So he can be a box player out of the slot and has the athletic ability to cover guys too. So I like him on the inside as well. And I feel like
good tackler too.
Yeah, with Marquise Groves Killebrew, hopefully he's matured. Okay, it's another one sort of similar to Kedrick Reesano. And this was a big time recruit. Like, he was a 4-star.
Yeah.
Right? Who started his career at A&M?
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M, then Louisville. Like, these are big programs. This is a very talented guy. Hopefully he's at the point now, like you said, where it's like, hey, some stability. I'm in the same place, same cornerbacks coach I've had for a couple years now. Needs to cut down on penalties. That's been an issue, but I agree. And if you look at the depth too at safety, you've got a guy like Jack Luttrell and Frausto Ramos. Those guys aren't even going to start necessarily, and they easily could start.
Yeah.
Right. So I think this is the position I feel best about overall on the entire roster, even with some minor lingering questions at quarterback.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing about this group is that even the backups have college experience.
Yeah.
And have played. Like Jack Luttrell had 3 interceptions last year, tied for the most. And last year, it was the first time he got his feet wet in playing college football. So you have the depth, you have the experience. I think that's going to take you a long way. But like Danny Gonzalez said, all those guys are great on the back end. It doesn't mean anything if those guys up front aren't doing their job. Yeah.
One final note on defensive backs. They have a bunch of defensive backs who are true freshmen too, coming in. Who we'll be seeing for the first time in training camp. I think there's the potential for maybe one of those guys to, maybe get a second string outside corner job. But the biggest impact in the area where those guys can go from, potential red shirts to kind of quote unquote, full-time players, special teams, right? That's where they're gonna like, can you stand out on kickoff coverage, punt coverage,
Yep.
etc. Usually that's where you'll see a defensive back, right? Guys who can run, guys who can tackle. We didn't see a lot of I love how you pointed this out. I don't think we saw like kickoff return or punt return like on a full team basis during the spring. I don't know if that was intentional or they just felt like, hey, let's wait till the other guys get here. But that's an area where some of those guys might be able to establish themselves or distinguish themselves as newcomers.
The kicking game, man. The
Oh
kicking
God,
game.
I didn't even try to transition into that.
That was a hell
And
of
I,
a transition.
man,
But like you said,
professional and unintentional segue by me.
but like you said, that's the opportunity for you
Yep.
to get on the field. And Craig Nivar, who's Arizona's first full-time special teams coordinator since was it Springer?
Since Jeremy Springer, is that right?
Jeremy Springer, yeah, he's the last full-time special teams coordinator in 2020. Jed Fish relied on Jordan Paopao as the tight ends coach and special teams coordinator. Last year with Brent Brennan, it was Danny Gonzalez as the linebackers and special teams coordinator. So now they got a full-time guy in Craig Nivar, who is just a ball of energy. The guys respect him. He definitely commands a room. And obviously he sees the value in special teams, and he's been really, telling these guys, if you want to play in the NFL, this is where you can find your role. There are guys in the NFL that are just special teams guys, and they become players by standing out on special teams. And so, those young players on kickoff coverages, punt coverages, they're going to be so important. And special teams last year, man, I love Danny Gonzalez. I think he's a great defense coordinator. He showed it at San Diego State and also ASU. As a special teams coordinator, man, I don't know. And there was just a lot of blunders last year.
Breakdowns.
I mean, they looked unprepared at times, like the swinging gate and the fake field goals against was it West Virginia and Texas Tech? Like, that just can't happen, right?
The punt return, you could argue the punt return against Kansas State turned their entire season.
Oh, around. Totally. Yeah, totally.
Right?
That was the one that started the avalanche.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Chuba Mai was over here, running down, chasing down the punt return. And I'm not trying to give up the secrets. And Craig Nivar even said, he's like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. But if you look at the punt protection for the punter, you don't see defensive linemen anymore.
No.
And I understand like the thought process. You want to make sure that you have big bodies that can kind of take the impact and stop those guys from getting to the punter. But what happens if you get into a situation where a punt returner from Kansas State is going down the sidelines? Well, you got big Chuba Mai trying his hardest, getting down the field, and he can't get them. If you get more linebacker, tight end types, the guys that can actually run down the field and cover, and they're big enough to maintain that contact, I think that's a better choice, and they're doing that. So just like little stuff like that, I think is going to have the special teams in a better place.
Yeah. So I'm going to explode a myth here or perception. They always say, the special teams advocates, that it's 1/3 of the game. That is not true, because if you look at the total number of snaps in a football game, it's actually much less than that, right? You might have 20 snaps on special teams out of like 150. So it's not really a third. But it's really important when you are a team like Arizona that is kind of like on the fringe, right? Like you're winning in the margins. You're trying to have less penalties than the other team. You're trying to win the turnover battle. Special teams falls into that category. Like, it's something that if you can win that, it might help you to, instead of losing 31-28, win 31-28.
Yeah.
And we feel like a lot of games are going to be like that in the Big 12 for this team, hopefully this year. There were a lot of like blowout losses last year where the games weren't really competitive, but special teams is an area where in a close game, like, it can make the difference. They had a super reliable place kicker last year. That's a big question heading into camp. I don't know about you, Justin. I don't know what to make of this like whole kicker punter deal. It doesn't seem like we get any straight answers about it either. Maybe we'll just see it for ourselves. But like, what is Michael Salgado Medina? Is he the punter? Is he the kicker? Is he both? TBD?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Craig Nivar was like, the cool thing about MSM, and we're calling him MSM. He didn't call him MSM, but he said the cool thing about MSM is, he can do both really well. And so we got to figure out, what do the other guys do really well? And then whatever those guys do, Michael Salgado Medina is going to do the other thing. Like, I really think that Michael Salgado Medina is not going to do both punter and kicker. But which one does he do? I don't know. Because is this Tyler Prayson guy, whose father kicked at the U of A, is he really good? And we just don't know about it. This Isaac Lovison guy, I mean, he's definitely an Australian punter. And you think, oh, Australian punter comes from Australian rules football. Man, he's going to be awesome. Well, not every Aussie punter is Mitch Wisnowski, right? You also have Lachlan Bruce, who played at Arizona. Yeah, Arizona had an Australian punter last year, didn't see the field once. So people can look at Isaac Lovison and like, oh, this guy is going to be really good. I don't know. I really couldn't tell you. Ian Wagner.
Not on the roster yet.
And is not on the roster, still trying to, work his way through school and stuff like that. Yeah. This transfer from Illinois State, Ian Wagner, who grew up in Sierra Vista and then moved to Illinois, went to high school out there and then went to Illinois State. Is he, he punted at Illinois State, but I mean, is it Power 4 level punting? Is it better than Michael Salgado Medina? He made 61% of his kicks, which isn't really a super high percentage, considering Tyler Loop made 84% of his kicks over his career. So I don't know, man. I really don't know. We'll find out. But I think
so. Here's my guess. Here's my prediction. Michael Salgado Medina is going to be the place kicker.
Yeah.
Someone else is going to be the punter. Maybe the Aussie.
Yeah, I think so.
But I think they're going to come to a point where, like, it's not that hard to figure out either, right? Like, you line them up. It's just like who's making the most kicks, like which, it's probably for us too, but the easiest thing to judge. How does it look coming off the foot, and is it going between the goalposts? So they're going to have a flat out competition. I'm going to say, there's a possibility it could be Ian Wagner. He was 11 for 15 on field goals last year. He was 8 for 10 in 23, 6 for 9 in 22. I'm sure the weather conditions were more difficult there.
That's true.
Than here, and people love kicking at Arizona Stadium in the state of Arizona. You got the elevation. We don't have a lot of precipitation either. So that's the other one that I think I would consider. Tyler Prasoon, probably like, competition / developmental guy. But we have seen freshmen come in here and be the punter, even if their long-term role was something else. Tyler Loop was a punter.
Yeah.
Michael Salgado Medina was a punter who I think was kind of sort of more of a long-term kicker. So yeah, that situation is like very much up in the air. We'll see how it turns out. And like I said, even though it's not 1/3 of the game, I don't want to diminish the importance of it, especially for a team like Arizona that needs to figure out a way to win close games.
And shout out to my guy, Avery Salerno and Broden Mullen, the two long snappers of the crew. We'll figure out what those guys will do this year. And then as far as like return,
hopefully they're better than you, Justin.
I hope they're better than me. Jeez Louise. Not my best efforts at the spring showcase, but yeah. And as far as like returners go, they have Ismail Mahdi, Quincy Craig, Jeremiah Patterson is back. He was Arizona's leading returner. Luke Wysong was also a really good returner at New Mexico last year. We didn't see them work on kickoff too much, but the guys that I just mentioned were, some of the players that were returning punts. Chris Hudson is another one as well. All of those guys have returning experience.
Plenty of return options. I would like to see better blocking in the return game. Give those guys a chance. I would also like to see better blocking. I was thinking about this. I don't know why, but the screen game last year, the bubble screen blocking was so bad. I mean, it was really not good. That's another area where they need to improve, because that's easy money.
Yeah,
if you can execute those plays, and they made it look hard, way harder than it's supposed to be, right? Get ready for a variety of screen passes Arizona fans this year. You are going to see all sorts as they try to get the ball out of the quarterback's hand into the playmaker's hand. And those offensive linemen, they got to be able to move.
Yeah.
We saw that a lot in spring ball. Those freshmen they're in for an eye-opening experience, right? Like you touting like this, how big those guys are. You better be in shape.
Yeah.
You're going to play offensive line for Seth Dagey.
Well, Alexander Deuced, he said it like the first few practices we wanted to throw up. It was that bad. Like we wanted to throw up.
When they have a drill where the whole point of the drill is simply like lining up, like running to a position to line up and then lining up again and again and again, you know that they're like really placing an emphasis on fitness.
Yep. So. Man, lots of things to look forward to in training camp and also the upcoming season. We are just about a month away from the season itself, but training camp is officially here. Myself and Michael Lev, we're going to have all the coverage and the details from training camp leading up to the season opener against Hawaii on August 30th. Check out all of our coverage of Arizona football on Tucson.com and also the Wildcaster mobile app. And don't forget to subscribe and comment the Wildcast on Apple and Spotify and find the video version on Tucson.com. Football's here, folks. Very exciting times. We'll see you guys on the next episode.